everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and this is the Astral Library. And we have another oldie returning today. We're going back to our beginner's guide, which if you don't know, my beginner guide series is essentially a recommendation video of books you're maybe intimidated by or genres you're intimidated by that you don't know where to start with. Maybe you read something and thought it was really interesting and you wanted to read more of it, but you didn't quite know where to go and you maybe got overwhelmed by all the options and availabilities and you just don't know where to start. Start here. Start with the beginner's guide. Plenty of them for you, from graphic novels to dawn-made novels to LGBT romance. They're all here, and today we got another genre one. But this one's kind of a subgenre that we find in a lot of our other favorite genres like fantasy and sci-fi and sometimes even romance. And of course, a subgenre is political intrigue. You can define political intrigue as a plethora of things, but for me, political intrigue is always looking at books that have politics and leadership and government and societal structures at the forefront of the general plot of what's going on, and it deeply affects the characters. And books that include it not only are focused on whatever mystery or conflict they're trying to overcome, it is also being involved and being stopped by the politics of the society. So I have a stack of 5 books here that I think really encapsulate political intrigue in interesting ways, from a more light version to some of the really complex, where the political landscape of these novels deeply affect every move that a character has to make. Let's go ahead and dive straight in with our very first pick. The first book I have for political intrigue is a YA novel that blew my mind when I read it for the first time, and that is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. So in this book, we have a society that is completely divided between heroes and villains, in which heroes are praised as the ultimate form of good and law-abiding, and villains are all things evil and must be not only suppressed, but almost eradicated. We are following our main character, Nova, who is born and is considered a villain, and she has been raised by these people and has seen the way they've been treated and is very much against this heroistic society and the hierarchy that has come with it. And so we're following Nova as she is plotting with the villains to sneak into a school for heroes to take down the society and to liberate her fellow villains. I really enjoyed this story, not only because I love Marissa Meyer's writing, like the Lunar Chronicles, Heartless, all of her books are so good. But Renegades is the one that really stuck out to me, because while there's political intrigue in her other series, it's this society that I thought she did the best. Because not only are we having this really interesting look at heroes and villains, but we're also looking at how these structures deeply affect the citizens living in it. Like, there's a lot of commentary on what happens when citizens give away their own protection and their own ability to protect themselves as they just rely on these heroes to do everything. And what does that happen when we have someone who goes against these structures for whatever reason and is then stigmatized as being other and outsider? It's very good. It's a 3-book series. It's YA, so it's very easy to get into, very easy to read. This is my original copy. You can see the yellowing that has happened. And I haven't read this book in years, and I still think about it. I still think about the world and the characters that I maybe should do a reread. Highly recommend it. I think this is a really good look at political intrigue while also not being too complex, because we're all pretty familiar with heroes and villains. The next one I have is a recent read. This one is so richly written, and the story and mythos behind it is so intriguing. And that is The Mercy Makers by Tessa Grafton. This is the same author who did the Queen of Innislear series, which is a King Lear retelling. So keep that in mind when you're going into her writing. Her writing can be a little dense with the prose, but not so much that it is like you're unable to parse out what she's saying. And in that, more in the sense that the description's so rich and the atmosphere she's creating is very distinct. In this book, we're following Irisette, who is this con woman and spy who has the ability to craft masks from magic, like disguises, and that she's used those to not only infiltrate the palace, but also to try to save her father, who has been captured by the Imperial Kingdom and is being sentenced to death. This book Oh my god. Not only do we like follow Irisa as she's like getting very deeply entrenched in the Imperial family trying to figure out what's going on, but just the way that politics are at play in this, because we have a brother-sister duo, but we also have this religious overtones and this like religion that seems to be at war with each other, where the brother and the sister play very different parts, but are both integral into keeping this god appeased. And Irisa stumbles into this mess and she is having to watch her back and every step she makes because there's so many moving parts. When we get the reveals in this, when we get romance, who I didn't know who to root for because there's just like some really good options, if you know what I mean. It's really this play between the brother and sister, and like you don't know who's on whose side. And as Irisa's trying to navigate, and we're trying to figure out this world and the role that she has to play in these grander schemes, and it just made it so much fun. It made it so intriguing. Like I couldn't put this book down. Like I would sit down to read for like a little bit, and then I'd like 3 hours would pass, and I'm like entrenched in what's happening. And like I said, this only gets more complex as the story builds on itself and as we learn and as we get more and more reveals. This is only the first book. The second book comes out, I think it comes out next month. It comes out very, very soon. So I am so excited. You will be seeing me read the sequel as soon as it's in my hands. All right, next we have another recent read, but I could not make a video about political intrigue without talking about this book. And that is The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. My god. This is probably the contender for the best book I've read this year. Not only for the really cool aspects of political intrigue in this, but just the way it is written is unlike anything I've seen in a really long time. And the narrator Hodgson uses, it's so good. It's so good, you need to read this. If you read anything from my recommendation videos, please let it be this. To give you a little bit more of a synopsis for the story, that I don't want to give you too much because I think this is a book that very much does better when you go in a little blind. But in this, we are following our main character, Nima, who is a Raven Scholar, which essentially that means she's in charge of like archives and documents and all things to do with like research and writing. And she is pretty close to the current emperor. However, that emperor is about to step down. And the way the society works is that when the emperor steps down, there is a kind of like trial and games where every sect has to like put forward a champion to then become the emperor for the next, I forget how many years, maybe like 10 years or so, 4 years. And that's who they decide to become the emperor. And Nima somehow finds herself embroiled in this competition, despite the fact that she never wanted to be there in the first place. That's all I'm gonna give you for the synopsis. Again, I think this is one that really you should go in blind and just see how the story unfolds, because the way everything happened, it had me guessing so many times and had me wrong so many times. Like every time I thought I figured something out, something new would come. With that kind of landscape in that we're going to be choosing a new ruler of this kingdom. Of course, political intrigue is up the wazoo in this novel, because not only are we dealing with the politics of the emperor and the people that are involved and who are against the emperor, but also just looking at the political landscape within each sect and how the characters have their own internalized motivations and how that affects their personality and how that affects how they're interacting with each other, that it's so deeply entrenched, especially when we get political intrigue spilling into personal relationships, looking at how maybe that has creating even more problems for this kingdom and for these competitors. She was so good. She was so good. It had you questioning the motivations for each characters. Like, why are they here? Why are they trying to become the emperor in the first place? Do they deserve it? And what would happen if they are in fact the emperor? This one was so good, guys. It's unlike anything I've read in a while, and in a current publishing sphere where everything is feeling a little samey, The Raven Scholar stood out so much. The next one, really, I could pick any book in this series, but I'm going to be very specific in which book of the series I'm going to recommend. And that's, of course, Iron Gold by Pierce Brown. This is the 4th book in the Red Rising saga, which is the start of the sequel series from the original trilogy. There's a reason why I'm picking Iron Gold and the start of the sequel series rather than Red Rising. And that's not because I don't think the political intrigue in Red Rising is not phenomenally done, but I think that Iron Gold and the society and political landscape that were crafted in the sequel series is just a little bit more complex in terms of how it is impacting the story. So to give you a general synopsis, Red Rising is following our main character Darrow, who is born into this society that is like broken down into a color caste system with golds on the top and reds on the bottom. And Darrow is a red. And the Reds are in charge of mining the surface of Mars, looking for ore, and trying to make it inhabitable for people to come live onto the planet. However, one day Darrow finds out that that has been a lie, and that essentially the Reds have been made into this slave labor force, and that Mars has been inhabited for centuries. And Darrow decides that he is done with this caste system and joins a rebellion to overthrow it. That is the premise. And to talk a little bit about this, I have to offer you a small spoiler that you probably already guessed, in that, of course, Darrow wins in the end. And the sequel series takes place a number of years after, I want to say maybe 20 years after Darrow's rebellion has succeeded. And we are looking at the new society that Darrow and his compatriots have made to replace the society that we found in Red Rising. And that is really, really intriguing because oftentimes the story ends at the rebellion and successfully overthrowing whatever oppressive government that we are seeing. And we really get a chance to look at how does one go about creating a new society outside of those very strict and very powerful structures that were held in place for so long. And Iron Gold is our first introduction back into that. And looking at how not everything is smooth sailings, and it in fact comes with a lot of issues to rebuild a society that everyone is going to be happy with. And specifically looking at how do you take a war-torn society into peace, and what then happens to our war-torn hero and political figures. The whole Red Rising saga is phenomenal, and I really, really recommend you read it. If only to get to this, to look at how we talk about societies and how the decisions we can make will affect not only us, but so many people, and that you are not able to please everyone. And that in fact, you may not be the best person to make these decisions. It was so good. Coming back to this after a really long break, having read the original series, it was so much fun, not only to meet Darrow and all his friends, but to really look at the world that he has created and the goals that he has created and how things are not perfect. And that's very realistic in that you can have all the intent and purpose in the world, but the power structures that it takes to create a society is not something that can even be done in 20 years. You're going to encounter friction, it's going to be hard, and there's going to be problems, and you're going to be constantly having to figure out what is best for not only you, but for an entire world. And this book does not shy away from that question, and really looking at how decisions come with consequences in all forms and aspects, even decisions where you made it with the best intentions. The last book is one that I admit I have not read, or at least that I have not read fully, which is something I don't like to do with these videos. I usually like to recommend books that I have fully read. But the political landscape from the first few sections of this book alone is enough for me to say you need to read it. And that is The Will of the Many by James Islington. This is another book that I think you really should go into blind, because I think it does such a great job of leading you into this mysterious and kind of complex world. So in this book, we're following our main character, Vise, who is a man with a secret, and that he is going through the society that he is living in the society under false pretenses, because if they were to find out who he really is, they would kill him. What it makes the society so interesting is that it is much like Red Rising, where we have a hierarchical society in which everyone's built in sort of a caste system. But more than that, if you are in a lower caste, you are physically giving a part of your being away to sustain the higher classes. And we're looking at Will, someone who is very much against this system. People giving what they call their will away. It is literally feeding into the power of people in charge. And Will refuses to engage in this. And he ends up infiltrating an academy to kind of learn more about this imperial family to take them down. Again, this is a book that I have not read fully yet, but the first chapter alone, I had got it from the library and I read it and I stopped, and then I went out and I bought this book, and I have bought the sequel, and it is a world that is stuck with me. Just the image they present us, because we start in a prison and we see what is done to these prisoners and how they are being harvested for their will. And that Vise is someone that has a power, very much can go against these structures. I was pulled in, and I know from everyone who's read this and has fallen in love with it, that this is a society and this is a structure that I think just plays such a huge role. Not only because we're seeing people literally be harvested for their will, but also what that kind of will does to certain people and how that is being taken advantage of. I think this is a book that is really going to shine in that political intrigue sphere, because not only are we trying to figure out what is going on with this will being harvested, but also, why is our main character on the run? What are they so afraid about him, as we kind of learn more and more about who he is and how and why his family was targeted by the imperial family. Every time I talk about this book, I'm just reminded of how much I need to read it, and this is no exception. I need to read this book soon. And I think I might pick it up after I finish my next read. But these are the 5 books that I am recommending if you are trying to get into political intrigue. They all have a little bit of that thrown into them. I think each of these societies and these governmental structures really play a large role, not only in how the world is, but the choices that our characters are making. So I hope you found a nice new read from this video. And if you did, please go ahead and leave me a comment down below. Let me know which of these you're planning to read, or if you've already read some of them, what do you think? Or if you have some other options, leave them down below. Everyone loves to come to the comments for these recommendation videos. Please recommend me your favorite political intrigue novels. But that's gonna go ahead and be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!